Welcome to Movie Division. Today, I'm going to recap the action crime thriller movie entitled John Wick Chapter 4. Spoilers ahead, watch out. The movie opens with John Wick and his pit bull seeking sanctuary from the law with the Bowery King in New York City. John's knuckles are bleeding from punching a board when BK enters to see if he's ready to go after the high table, to which John replies, yeah. John goes to Morocco where he rides his horse in pursuit of the men working for the Elder. After killing those men, John goes to the Elder and demands his ring, but the Elder informs John that the ring is no longer there. The Elder is then put to death by John before he leaves. After returning to New York, Winston and Charon are asked by the Harbinger to meet the Marquis de Gramont, who has been sent by the High Table. Now they know that the Elder was put to death, and the Marquis chastises Winston for not killing John. The New York Continental is consequently condemned and blown up by the Marquis. To add insult to injury, the Marquis shoots Charon in the chest after declaring Winston excommunicado. Winston says by his dying friend's side, claiming the death sentence was meant for him instead. Kane, a blind assassin residing in Paris, is standing in the park listening to his daughter Mia play the violin. The Marquis instructs Kane to pursue John. Although Kane claims to be retired, the Marquis threatens Mia's life if Kane defies the High Table's directives. John travels to the Osaka Continental, run by Shimizu Koji, an old friend whose daughter Akira serves as his concierge. Although Akira doesn't trust John being there, Koji meets with John on the roof and agrees to provide him with sanctuary in secret. Soon, the Marquis' right-hand man, Chitty, and his hit squad show up in an effort to entice John out. Koji's men arrive and engage the High Table killers by shooting arrows in the dark. When the assassins reach the top floor, John pulls out his weapon and begins to do what he does best. Kane arrives and begins his own body count while Koji's guards are busy killing off most of the High Table hitmen. He uses traps to help him bear where his targets are moving and then dispatches them with his sword and gun. Akira, meanwhile, joins the fray, executes some of Chitty's men, but is herself shot and injured in the process. John aids her and Koji in escaping while he continues to fight the remaining men, dispatching several of them with nunchucks. Kane tracks him down. He and John were once friends, so Kane is hesitant to pursue John for Mia's sake, but he ultimately decides to. After a brief altercation, John is able to escape from Kane. A tracker known only as Mr. Nobody, who was present during the gunfights with his German shepherd by his side, kills a number of the assailants sent to kill John. He too is interested in John's contract, but he thinks the current hit, $20 million, is inadequate. Koji and Akira run into Kane as they are leaving. He and Koji have been friends for a long time, but Koji won't let Kane pursue John, so the two fight with swords. When it seems that Koji will be allowed to leave, he continues to struggle until Kane strikes him in the head. Akira holds her father's body as he passes away and tries to slay Kane with his sword, but he warns her not to do so lest she meet the same fate as her father and promises to see her again. Akira seeks out John at the train station and accuses him of being responsible for her father's passing. She warns him that if he doesn't kill Kane, she will. Winston meets Bowery King because they both understand that the fact that they are still close to John makes them targets. The Harbinger confronts the Marquis about the needless bloodshed at the Osaka Continental, but the Marquis insists that it is essential to kill John Wick in addition to dismantling the notion that he is an untouchable and unkillable figure. Mr. Nobody then pays a visit to the Marquis and demands a $23 million contract to kill John. In response, the Marquis stabs his hand, forcing him to choose between removing the knife and pulling his hand out to consider his goals. The Marquis grants Mr. Nobody's request as he pulls his hand away, cutting his fingers. At Charon's tomb, John runs into Winston and expresses his sorrow over his friend's passing. Though it is widely believed that High Table duel were only myths, Winston wants to exact revenge on the Marquis, and so he informs John that he must challenge the Marquis to a duel in order to be discharged from the High Table. Only John's family can help him succeed, but the Ruska Roma tore his connection with them and cut off support. John decides to look for them since there is no other option. When John arrives at the Ruska Roma in Berlin, the priest greets him with a shotgun blast before trying him up and placing a noose around his neck. He is greeted by Katya, his adoptive sister, who is upset with him because the Marquis ordered the execution of her father, Peter, as a result of John's killing of the Elder, and Peter would have supported John in the duel. In response to John's offer to help Katya make amends, she instructs him to seek out German High Table member Killa, the person responsible for her father's murder. After being tracked down, Kane and Mr. Nobody meet John at Killa's nightclub. Killa invites the three to a game of cards, where he cheats and sends his men after the assassins. John chases after Killa all over the club, amongst unaware clubgoers, while Kane and Nobody hold off the thugs with the help of Nobody's dog. John fights Killa, slicing his neck with a card, but Killa uses his size and strength to his advantage. Killa sends his men after John, and as expected, they all die a horrible death. Killa tries to stop John by pushing him off a balcony, but John is unstoppable. Killa was killed when John cornered him and knocked him off a flight of chairs, sending him crashing to the ground head first. John then brings Katya the gold tooth he took from Killa as proof of his death. She approves, and she and John go through the ritual in which John is branded with the family crest and given permission to fight the duel. Winston goes to see the Marquis to deliver John's formal challenge for the upcoming duel. Winston points out to the Marquis that despite his protests, he is still obligated to follow the traditions of the High Table. Additionally, Winston demands that if John wins, he will restore his management to the Continental, remove the condemnation, and end his excommunication. Winston is, however, reminded by the Marquis that since he will be John's second, he too will pass away if John does. The Harbinger preside over them as John arrives to sit down with the Marquis to discuss the terms of the duel. At dawn, they will meet at Paris's Sacré-Cœur and engage in a gun duel. It will be a forfeiture and grounds for execution if either of them falls to appear by the deadline. Cain will be the Marquis' second child, and if he can kill John, he'll release both him and his daughter. John visits a church and sits there to honor Helen. He meets Cain there, who welcomes him and tells him about Mia and what he stands to lose. After that, John meets up with Winston and Bowery King, who equips him with a new gun and a bulletproof vest. The Harbinger warns the Marquis of what would transpire if John were to kill him at the High Table. The Marquis sends Chitty and his thugs after John to make sure he doesn't arrive at the Sacré-Cœur in time. Additionally, a radio DJ informs any other assassins who are listening that John has a bounty on his head for anyone who can kill him before dawn. John is being pursued by a large group of assassins as he makes his way to the Sacré-Cœur. He engages the men in the streets, even in the middle of traffic near the Arc de Triomphe, either by shooting them or letting them get run over. As a result of the High Table keeping tabs on his whereabouts, more assassins are sent in his direction. A warehouse is full of bad guys, and John decides to go in there and start shooting explosive rounds. Simultaneously, nobody assists in eliminating some of the assassins and communicates with the Marquis in an effort to increase his payment. Finally, the Marquis signs a $40 million contract, drawing in more hopeless and ultimately doomed assassins. When John finally reaches the Sacré-Cœur steps, he kills a number of additional assailants before Chitty appears and throws him all the way back down the steps. In order to help John ascend to the top and kill Chitty's men, Cain appears. Nobody shows up and starts fighting Chitty for throwing his dog into the street, but the dog is fine. Chitty is brought to the ground with John's assistance, the dog bites him in the balls, and nobody shoots him in the head. The dog also urinates on Chitty's face for good measure. Just before the sun rises, John arrives. He and Cain take up their pistols and begin a traditional duel. Both succeed in striking each other twice. Cain shoots John in the stomach during the third round, but John doesn't respond. The Marquis then gives him the go-ahead to pull off the ultimate kill so that he can be the one to dispose of John Wick. Before Winston calls him a conceited asshole and points out that John didn't fire his last round, he grabs his gun and points it at John. Before John blows his brains out, the Marquis realizes this, but it's too late. After that, the Harbinger declares that John and Cain are no longer subject to the High Table's demands. John briefly remembers Helen as he descends the stairs and mutters her name before collapsing. A free man, John Wick passes away. Bowery and Winston John requested that his tombstone read, "Loving husband," so the king interred him next to Helen. When BK inquires as to whether John is in heaven or hell, Winston responds, "Who knows?" As the two depart, BK keeps watching over John's dog. Cain's search for Mia and their reunion takes place after the credits roll. Akira is drawing near to make her revenge on him, and the movie ends here. If you enjoy the recap, leave a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell notification to get notified when we post the next fascinating recap. It really helps the channel. Thanks for watching.